Video we talk about characteristics of living beings, basics of biology. What are the living beings? We consider something as a living being when they have capabilities or specifications or characteristics or properties that tells us that the living being grows. The living being has a capacity for metabolism. The living being has consciousness. The living being is able to adapt to the environment. Living being is responding to the external stimulus. It has a cellular organization, the cells, the tissues, the muscles types of thing. And then they reproduce. These are some of the characteristics based on which we classify or we understand or we study a living being. Now, growth. What is growth? Growth means the cells in the living being multiply. They multiply into or grow into tissues or organs are developed which will take care of, for example, reproductive system, nervous system, digestive system, respiratory system. So, organs develop into systems, skeletal systems. The growth of the cells also causes increase in the mass or the number of individual cells. The number of individual cells results in, after reproduction, number of individuals also. The cells multiply by two types of division, meiotic or mitotic. Now, another characteristics of living being is reproduction. What is that? They produce young ones. How they produce young one? The offsprings are produced to ensure survival of the species. If the mango tree doesn't produce a mango fruit or a mango seed, the magnifera indica species will not be there on earth. Likewise, if a chicken or a hen doesn't lay an egg, there will be no more chicken. So, for the continuation of the population, the living beings produce young ones. The reproduction can be asexual or sexual. Asexual is do not involve fusion of gametes, the male and female sex cells. For example, amoeba. Sexual is fusion of the male and female gametes. So, human beings, animals, most of them are sexual reproduction. Some plants are asexual, some are sexual. Asexual plant is papaya. Cellular organization of the organisms also help us to classify them as a special characteristic to differentiate it from non-living things. What is that? The composition of the cells. The composition of the cells. The arrangement of the cells. How the cells are arranged within the body or within the organ or a tissue. The organ system, different living beings have different organ systems, but there are no living beings without organ system. Some sort of system, howsoever primitive, will be there. What is an organ system? A advanced version of multiple cells. The cells grow into tissues, tissues grow into organs, organs grow into systems. And these cells are dynamic. These cells are self-regulating and they repair. So when something goes wrong, the cells repair. When the cells become old, they kill themselves. When the new cells are repaired, they create new cells. They support the other cells. So cells are dynamic and self-regulating. Some organisms are unicellular, single cell amoeba. Some organisms are multicellular, for example, human beings. And when they are multicellular, you have multiple types of cells also. For example, in your body, the cells in your blood is different from the cells in your heart is different from the cells in your hair or nail. One of the characteristic of living organisms is metabolism. What is metabolism? A series of chemical processes that are facilitated by enzymes that occur within your body. In human beings, we call it as a mechanism by which the food is converted into energy for the body to sustain. A series of chemical processes that occurs within our body and it is facilitated by various enzymes that are secreted by various glands from within the body. What is catabolism? The breaking down of the complex substances into simpler ones is called catabolism. What is anabolism? Formation of the complex substances from simpler ones is called anabolism. Now, human beings normally don't do much of anabolism. They are heterotrophs. Anabolism is done by autotrophs, which are plants. By means of photosynthesis, using simple things like water, sunlight, chlorophyll, they create food. Human beings, what they do, they take the food, carbohydrate and protein, and using saliva, using the digestive juices in the stomach, using hydrochloric acid, break it down into simpler elements which the blood can absorb. So catabolism is breaking down of the complex substance, anabolism is creation of the complex substances. What is adaptation? Adaptation is the mechanism by which an organism is able to survive in a harsh environment and sometimes even thrive in an unfavorable environment. The long-term adaptations are human beings have become erect. Earlier they were like apes, and then before that they were four-legged. So permanent changes in response to the changes in the environment. Maybe something externally changed, something maybe the organism itself moved to a new environment or a new situation. What are short-term changes? Temporary changes in response to changing environment. What is that? Hibernation and estivation. Hibernation is going to sleep. Hibernation and estivation. Thermoregulation. Thermoregulation is a mechanism of an organism to maintain its temperature. Thermoregulation is regulation of its heat. So hypothermia is decrease in the body temperature below the normal. Heat stroke is caused when temperature of the body increases above normal. And so what happens when it is above the normal? Sometimes if you are standing too much in the sun, the body gets too much heated and then you faint and fall down. That means what? The systems in the body is shutting it down because it cannot absorb so much heat. Hypothermia is decrease in the body temperature. Body becomes very cold. That is hypothermia. Consciousness is an important characteristic of living beings. It is ability to sense the environment. For example, irritability is one of the parameters by which we measure the consciousness. What is irritability? You get irritated. That is one. The reaction against external stimuli is called irritability. Reaction against external stimuli. The branch moves towards the source of light. The root moves towards the source of water. Like that is the response to sensing the environment. Now we have seen the different characteristics which help us to define a living thing. Now what is systematics? We will see now. What is biodiversity? Biodiversity means the diversity or differences in the different bio means living things, plants and animals. The variability among the living organisms. The ecological complexities, because different living organisms are different and they have in hundreds of ways they are different. The ecology in which they live, the habitat is different. The way they give and take to the ecology is different. The food chain is different. The food web is different. There are genetic variations inside the organism, and then the way they reproduce is different. After reproduction, what happens to the next generation and what characteristics they have is different. So this is biodiversity, hundreds of thousands of ways in which we can learn about the each and every organism. And how many species we have? Not just hundreds or thousands, but more. Systematics is a study of the characteristics, that is selecting and eliminating. Systematics is studying living organisms by looking at their characteristics, that is selecting certain to a particular group for study and eliminating certain things into another group for not to be studied at the moment. And then identification how? Position of an organism on an established pattern or a classification system. Just like for elements we have a periodic table, we have a classification system as to an organism falls into which kingdom or which plant or which phylum or which group or which classification. So systematics is involving the study of the characteristics, identification, that is positioning or placing an organism based on already known information, classification of this, it is a grouping of the organisms based on certain observable similar qualities or characters. So based on fundamental characters, based on observable characters, the organisms are classified, that is grouped. The organisms are identified based on established classification system. And within the classification system, what do? We have a nomenclature, that means naming convention. What is a naming convention? Normally, you have a binomial nomenclature. What is the binomial? Magnifera indica, Hibiscus rosa sinensis, Homo sapiens. So, generic name and a specific epithet. Generic name and a specific epithet. So, binomial system was proposed by Linnaeus, a Swedish botanist, as early as 1753. Linnaeus was living some 200 or 300 years ago, and at that time itself the binomial nomenclature has been proposed. He wrote a book called Plantarum, Species Plantarum, on which he used this concept. Now when we say systematics is study by identifying the characteristics of a plant or an animal and then selecting or eliminating it and then finding out what is the position from among the known classification system, after grouping the animals into various groups and then giving them a name. How do we have this now? We have this as a kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, hierarchy. Kingdom is a big plant kingdom, animal kingdom, like that. And then it comes down phylum, further class, further order, further family. And then we have a genus. Magnifera is a genus. A species is Indica. Indica is a species. This is how we have the classification systematics. Thanks for watching this video. We will come back with another session on classification of living organisms. Now we have seen characteristics.